All right. Welcome, Twitch people. Thank you for tuning into my stream. I am once again plagued by tech issues because my new fancy Mac Studio has a seemingly broken version of whatever the newest Mac OS is, which is running the same Monterey, there we go, 12.5 as my Air, and can't seem to find my mic or webcam. So you're getting potato quality old Bose headphone stuff today. Sorry about that. But on the bright side, I have some great stuff coming up for the stream today. I'm going to continue the open source work that I had started doing last week, or I guess earlier this week. We go to Definitely Typed and go to Polls under me, and I'll post this in the chat soon. So you'll see on the screen the URL there also. Oh, pardon me. It's not Definitely Typed Tools. It's Definitely Typed Tools uh, under the Microsoft Oregon GitHub. Voila. We have converted DT header from TSLint to ESLint. This is what I had started working on last week and streamed earlier this week, and I have a first PR to show. So I'm pretty excited about this. Let me just tweet about it. As actually, wait, I'm just gonna continue. So before we tweet, let me see if code does get shared. Yay. Let me just close all my other crap. I would like to continue in this work by tackling the next rule. So to recap from the last stream, for anyone who wasn't there, oh geez, guess I need to clone this repo. There is this repo definitely typed tools that contains the tooling for definitely typed, which is the definitely typed is the repo that contains all the third-party community written type definitions for things like React and Lodash and other, which don't have their own um, type definitions built in for TypeScript. Let me just delete my temp stuff. Now, definitely typed tools, the tooling for this, includes a tool called DTF-lint. DTS-lint is a wrapper around TS-lint, which is an old linter for JavaScript. We don't do TS-lint anymore. We use ES-lint with TypeScript ES-lint tooling on top. But part of the work for this year for Definitely Typed Tools is to convert the old TS-lint rules in DTS-lint to ES-lint, which DTS-lint now supports. The first example of a rule that I converted is DT header. Nathan Sanders Shively, one of the other internet people out there, one of the members of the TypeScript team, already converted no const daemon and no dead reference. So I'm just going to keep going down. Let me zoom in a couple times. Keep going down. Oh, wow. Yeah, OBS isn't showing VS Code. The weirdest thing. Let me just get that application capture for code showing. There you go. The weirdest thing with this freaking new Mac operating system, OBS, the beta just has so many issues with it. I don't know if it's because OBS is a beta or what. Anyway, you can zoom out once. These rules, um, these rules are just a big alphabetical list of TSLint rules. Another person who was on the stream last time, shout out Alex Munoz, sent another conversion for no useless files, which I can show you. Boop, there you go. So I now know that I need to do something other than no useless files in DT header next. The next rule is expect rule. This one, oh boy, this looks a little more complicated. So this will be a fun little stream. It asserts types with expect type. Actually, this rule we can ignore because there is an existing ESLint plugin that I actually started maintaining at some point called uh, ESLint plugin expects type, want to say? Yeah, here we go. So I don't think we really need to worry about this just yet. I'll save this larger, more complex rule for later if we end up needing to convert it. Next up, alphabetically, is export just namespace rule. Let me go ahead and read the metadata on the rule to understand what it does. It forbids you from doing export equals foo, where foo is a namespace and isn't merged with a function class type interface. And the failure string mentioned is instead of export equaling a namespace, use the body of the namespace as the module body. Okay, so my understanding of this is if you have namespace my stuff function foo, this namespace my stuff is a way to declare an object that has a whole bunch of members in it that is exported. And then you can do export equals my stuff to say all the contents of that object are exported. There's no way I know to tell TypeScript this is a DT file, definition file, so we could ignore the red squiggly. But this shebang is basically the same as doing export function foo. So the rule is saying there's really no need to export equals namespace when the namespace isn't also being merged with something like a class. Which, fun fact, you can do in declaration files. I guess the namespace has to come after. Okay. All right. So this is what we're banning. Don't save, close. So I'm going to copy GitHub permalink and tweet about it. Always be tweeting ABTs. Good morning, Chancellor Dev. First up, converting from ESLint to type from TSLint to ESLint. Fixing my desk a little bit here. And let's just get the URL to be Microsoft. All right. Export just namespace rule. Let me open on the right. This is an example of an ESLint rule. It has somewhat similar metadata, like the description and options and stuff like that, but otherwise it's pretty different. So I'm going to go ahead and copy in the new file name format, which is dashes, so export just namespace and no rule at the end. I'll also note that in my PR, I had moved this create rule into utils. DTS lint util? Yes, util. Because there are a bunch of places that use the same logic. So in this PR, we auto update those imports. I will apply the same refactor so that eventually they'll get merged in. So we dedupe this same code very nicely. Now there's only one place. Great. And just to recap what this does, create rule is a rule creator function. There's this set of ESLint utils that TypeScript ESLint exports. It takes in a function which takes in the name of the rule and gives you a link to the docs for that rule. So create rule is like this nice little utility that helps type out a rule. Let's go ahead and start filling it out. Name, export just namespace. Where's the description? There we go. Description. Forbid const none for the old one. Now it's forbid to export. That grammar feels off. Let's say forbids export equals foo, or foo equals namespace and isn't merged with a function class type interface. All right. And in TSLint, there was no support for message IDs. You just wrote your own. Oh, I'm not sharing. Ah, sorry. I didn't think to set up the auto switcher, and now I'm being punished for it. So yes, export rule with the name, with the description, and messages. In TSLint, you just had functions that would concatenate strings, but now we have message IDs, a little more done for you. So I'm gonna say message ID. What should it be? Use the body, I'm guessing, instead of export equals in a namespace. Use the body. I'll just put that. Message ID isn't really shown to users. It's just for the code. So yeah, whatever. Eh, This is done. TSLint rules had you manually walk over the source file um, and then look at the TypeScript syntax. It's manually commented out to tests here. ESLint rules return an object that has a bunch of query selectors on it as keys. Let's look at no const enum. For example, in no const enum, if we see a TypeScript enum declaration that is const, then we context our report. That is the way to complain. So let's look at the walk function here. Here we look at all export equals statements, which is all nodes that are immediate root children of the source file and are an export assignment and don't have is export equals. So just to understand this tree, I'm going to go to the handy dandy TypeScript eslints.io/play. This is our equivalent of ASD Explorer that's specifically tailored for TypeScript things. And let's get an example from the tests of a complaint here. And let's look at the AST viewer for TypeScript. So in the source file statements, this AST is a representation of all this stuff. Ah! Hey, Deutenium. Yeah, let's set it up. Let's have you on here. I'd love to hear what you've been up to. Solid, Astro, your book. Yeah. Or wait, maybe the last one is different. But yeah, no, definitely. Let's chat on DM. I'd love to have you on here. Thanks for coming over. Also, did you know this is your first time chatting here? I could have sworn we talked before on Twitch. Must have been on your stream. Anyway, hi. By the way, to you and anyone else in the chat, feel free to bring things up, chat. Oh, it's some other secret project. Why did I have a suspicion you had something going on? Very exciting. Very exciting. But yeah, to you and anyone else, feel free to chat. Anything you want. TypeScript, ESLint, life, programming, Philadelphia. Always happy to chat. Hee Um, all right, so looking at here, there are two statements and module declaration, which is not what we're looking for. We're trying to figure out how to redo the is export equals stuff, and then export assignments, which does in fact have this is export equals true. Unfortunately, TypeScript uses a different AST representation than ESLint. So let's look at ESTree to see how it actually looks in ESLint. ESTree, ECMAScript tree, ESLint. So here we have a TS export assignment. TypeScript ESLint adds in parsing for TypeScript nodes and calls them all TS something. And it is a TS export assignment. So I guess that's just the node type. There's no like is export equals, that's just what it is. An export assignment. Okay. So I guess that's just going to be my query. TS export assignment, which takes in a node and does something with the node. Oh yeah, so naming convention is an ESLint rule or TypeScript ESLint rule. It's a TypeScript specific thing. Let me try to like const foo equals whatever. Let's call it value. I don't like foo. If we set language mode to JavaScript, you'll get the complaint VS Code like export equal can only be used in TypeScript files. It's these days really just used for compatibility in the type system layer with old projects that did weird stuff, like setting the export equals. It's like kind of a type system equivalent to module.exports equals, but like can be transpiled to AMD, I think. But yeah, this is just a TypeScript thing. Good question. I wish I had thought to cover that. Uh, yeah, there's all sorts of like weird, wacky TypeScript syntax that nowadays really just exist for compatibility. And I know a lot of people have been pooping on ESM, and I have personally been inconvenienced by the switch. But having a standard module format that supports root level async 08 or module scope, whatever it's called, like having the ability to do async 08 in your code and then work with the module loader, which does not work with CommonJS, is so nice. I like standardizing. So maybe in 3 years I'll be happy about ESM once all the tooling supports it. Anyway, we get all the export equals statements. Uh, I guess the TSLint rule assumed there's just one, or yeah, there's a first one, but yeah. Actually, the TSLint rule doesn't use the type system as much as it could. It could say a type predicate node is ts.export assignment, and then this typecast, or sorry, type assertion would be unnecessary in TSLint rule because statements.find knows that if it takes in a type predicate, it will return the type from the type predicate or undefined. So cleaning up the old TSLint code while I'm trying to delete it. All right. Next we have const expr equals export equals node.expression. Node has an expression in ESLint, so that's nice. I'm sorry, what do you need pictures of? What blather did I say that is relevant to that I've since 5 seconds later forgotten about? I think all the cats are outside. I might be able to get a cat. I think they might have come back in. Oh yeah, no cats, but yes nodes. So let me, yeah, if only someone had some cool like Excalidraw system or whatnot. Yeah, good call. Let's look at these. So export equals true. I'm gonna call this stuff. Export equals stuff. Export equals stuff. Let me collapse that module declaration. Is a TS export assignment that has an expression. And I don't know if you can see the highlighting. You might need to do some accessibility work there. But the expression is here the identifier with name stuff. So the expression is what is being exported. So I guess that's called the same thing in TypeScript and ES3. Yeah, expression. Oops. There you go. So just looking through the code, and let me know if that makes sense or is not what you're looking for. In the TypeScript thing, we're saying if it's not an identifier, then return. And I'm guessing that's because in uh, this stuff you could do like create other thing. Uh, Guess this would work, or like type of create. Like you can do weird and wacky things where the expression isn't actually an identifier, a name is something. It's like whatever this is, unary expression, the type of operator. So that's why the TSLint rule was saying uh, if it's not an identifier, the expression return. So I'm going to say in ESLN if node expression dot type not equal AST node types, which is a utility from TypeScript ESLint, dot identifier, return. So now at the end of this, we can say, look at node expression, and we know it's it's a node type identifier. However, there's actually something slightly cleverer we can do here. We can do TS export assignment, where the identifier.type, or pardon me, the expression.type equals whatever this is, identifier. Oh no, am I quiet? I'm sorry. My OBS says that I'm mid-green bordering on yellow. I just turned it up a little bit. Let me know if that's okay. Oh, I like this explanation. Let me audio verbal it. You implement ESLint rules by referring to the official fancy node graph, and then you can, oh yay, better. And then you can match a node using this fancy TS export query syntax and then interrogate further. Yeah. So the general logic flow for an ESLint rule is oftentimes find a particular class of node or type of node, run some logic to see if it matches some bad pattern, and then context or report or complain if it's bad in that way. So here what we're doing is we're finding an export equals and which is like the particular type of node. We're gonna check if um, the statement violates some notion. Oh yay! A tier one subgift. Thank you for doing that, Titanium. And Titanium. And then we're going to complain if that case is true. So here we're saying, find me a TS export assignment where there's an expression.type identifier, which I'm going to have to quote here. And this is like a kind of like a CSS selector here, where we're saying, find an export assignment where the expression is an identifier. So I'm going to have to do the types manually, so because we don't have like fancy parsing in the type system yet, although that's actually something we're going to do eventually. Node export assignment with identifier. Ooh, good question. The file on the left is the old TSLint rule, and the file on the right is me rewriting the rule in ESLint. So TSLint structures things a little differently, a little more manual, and ESLint has these nice helpers or nicer structures like you can, in your rule logic, you return an object that has a key for each query you want to run mapped to the function that runs whenever a node of that type is found. Like here we're saying AST node. Oh, where is this? There we go. Oh geez, that's probably not the right import, but here we're saying like whenever I find a TS export assignment where the expression is, here, I remember off the top of my head, TSES tree dot identifier. Yeah, so this, haha, now it's line 27. This is kind of unfortunate of syntax because it's like, I don't know, it's got a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, this is a CSS query basically, but for the types, and it's mapped to a function that takes in the node. Oops. So let me just expand even further. There we go. And why is this complaining? Oh yeah, there's a lint rule object. So that's just object shorthand. Oh yeah, hey Tech Squid TV, first time chat, yay. Um, yeah, I'm going to be moving to Philly in a month and a half. If you have any recommendations for things to do, places to go, people to meet, such as yourself for coffee, then hit me up. Love to see this community in the chat. I like this. All right, so on the left, we have an old TS-lint rule, which is the deprecated linter that we stopped using years ago, hopefully. And on the right, we have me rewriting a still used rule in the DefinitelyTyped-Tools in ESLints with TypeScript ESLint. So the old rule said, in your source file, find the first export equals, that's exporting an identifier. Look at all these gifts. Thanks, Dan. Titanium. So now we can actually remove this if statement here because we're saying in the query, we look for an export assignment where its expression type is identifier. And just for all the new folks in the chat, I'm going to show the TSES tree representation again. So export equals stuff. An AST is a representation of, oh geez, what is my undo doing? An AST is a representation of your code in like a plain old JavaScript object form, a nested structure, where in the format of program, we have this body that has two statements in it. One of them is an export assignment, which has type export assignment. Expression is this identifier, and the identifier's name is stuff. Really represent? Great. I look forward to being a resident of your lovely city. I'm paying 3/4 the rent for a place twice the size, starting next month, compared to what I live in Brooklyn now. So that's exciting. Represent. Always sunny. So what we're trying to do is write a lint rule that says, hey, instead of doing declare namespace stuff and then like function foo, this is all for declaration files and text. Only this export equals is not valid JavaScript syntax. What you actually should be doing is just import function foo. Ooh, ESLint rules seem inherently hard to stream because if you're coming in without context, it can be hard. Maybe we can comment each part of the code so that when people join, they can use that context. Two things. Well, actually, three. One, thank you for all the gifts, Titanium. Two, yes, you're totally right. Let me go ahead and do that, or I'll start doing that. Third thing, I really appreciate the live suggestions here. I'm not being sarcastic. I legitimately really appreciate you giving me these pro tips because this is really helpful for me. So thank you. Yeah, so this is an ESLint rule that will ban code like this, where let me just copy from the TSLint rule, bans code like this in favor of code like this. Actually, let me export equals stuff. I'll call it stuff and function do things. What you actually want is export function do things. Cool. So this up here, meta is metadata of the rule, description, a bit of docs, and the possible message IDs it'll log. Metadata. Fudge! Ah, the hardware. Sorry. I'm between Macs, and then there's this weird bug in OBS that I hit last time too, and then I didn't have time to set up the freaking screen. Yeah, sorry. So this is an ESLint rule that bans code like this, export equals stuff, declare namespace stuff, because you can simplify it for code like this, just export the things directly. So there are two main parts of a rule. Yay! Yeah, definitely let me know if these comments do or don't work for you. Two main parts of the rule are metadata and create. Metadata is like, what is the rule? What are the messages it'll complain with? And then create takes in an object with ESLint APIs such as reports, which makes a create, and returns, and this is really good advice, by the way, commenting these things as I stream. Good shit. Good stuff, thank you. And returns an object with key value pairs, where the keys are CSS queries, queries similar to CSS queries, but for AST nodes, and values whenever a function to run on each node matching the query. AST, indent those a little bit. AST equals abstract syntax tree, a representation of the nodes in your code. And then for reference, see astexplorer.net. That's another really good website that has ASTs for all sorts of different languages and stuff. JavaScript. I think they have like C# and Go and stuff on here, or at least Go and GraphQL. Like function hi. This will show you all sorts of things for the nodes. I like to hide empty keys and location data. So here we have like a function whose name is an identifier with the escape text hi. Ooh, what does each function value return? Let's go back to the screen share. Good question. So right now the functions don't actually have to return anything. Um, but if they, uh, each of these functions generally doesn't return anything, but um, they may call context.report if it finds a complaint. So let's just to test the rule out. I'm not a huge TDD person myself, but I respect it and try to remember to kind of do it. Let's report. Context report can take in a node and a message ID. By the way, cute little TypeScript thing that the TypeScript ESLint's create rule utility sets up. When you add message IDs under the messages object, it keeps that in the type for the rule. So the create rule generic takes in the options type, which here is never, there are array, there are no options, and then a union of the possible message IDs. So now later on we can get autocomplete on the message IDs. Cute little thing. So this is just a very straightforward, I don't want to say simple because nothing in code is simple to folks who haven't seen it before, but this is a very straightforward ESLint rule. Whenever we find an export equals with an identifier, we complain. Now, the to-do here is a lot. Like to-do, make sure the identifier is a namespace, and then only complain if the identifier has previously been used to declare other things. So we might actually get a little bit more complex in this rule. But for now, I'm just going to ban all export equals assignments because, well, it's a good way to test the rule. So let me know if any of that does or doesn't make sense while I follow all of you on Twitter. Is it at all possible to capture comments? Oh, God. So comments, yes, it is possible, but it's not as easy as you'd want it to be. Comments aren't actually typically stored in the AST for most programs, which I find to be just the most inconvenient thing ever. I'm going to switch to the TypeScript eslints.io playground. I'll just put it in the chat. And then under options, AST viewer, ESTree is the option, or is the value ESLint runs with. So let's put a comment here. Const name equals me. To do, get better name, or my name, let's call it, because there's actually already a global variable named name. Okay. Right. Nowhere in this AS tree do you see comments. However, they are stored alongside the AS tree, or alongside the tree, pardon me. So back in code land, you can get them. There are APIs like uh, context.get source code gives you the source code object. Pain in the butt already. And then you can do like source code dot get comments after, which takes in a node, get comments before, get comments inside, get all comments, which gives you an array of comments. So you can get them, and then like you could loop over the content of those comments. So like, let's say we had like a comment. Let's just look. What is inside a comment? I'm gonna go to definition or go to type definition on it to see what's in it. So it's a block comment, which is a base token, which has value string. So each comment has a string. And all node or token datas, I believe also, let's go to that, has a location and a range. So you can like figure out all the to-do comments and then look at their range. How many? I'll go through an order. Neat. It must have some abstraction that is tied to the tree, but not includes. Seems silly. Yeah, I always thought it was silly. And yet people who know much more than me and have more experience do it this way and have repeatedly done it this way. So I guess it's better. I don't know. Maybe we're all just doing it wrong. I'm told it's much better for performance. AST parsing is like really important to be done quickly. And TypeScript is written in TypeScript, so it runs in JavaScript, so performance is a pain. I think C# is done the same way. They're made by the same person, Anders Hosberg, or Anders Hosberg, I think. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't design this. Um, I might have missed this, but how much code does context contain? Context is, you didn't miss it. I just never explained this. Good call. Context is the kind of the ESLint API that gives you all this stuff for the file. So if we go to type definition, it gives read only. That's not what I wanted. Go to definition on create. There we go. Rule context. So rule context has, in addition to your options and information on like how you parsed the thing and settings, it has info on the file itself, like your virtual file name and your physical file name. It has report, and you can get the source code, which is all the text of the file. So context kind of gives you everything. So you're basically able to access stuff only through context or through these returns. ES query, it's called queries. And yes, good call. Each context is unique to a source file. So it's the context for a single source file. ESLint rules are designed to run as if they could be run in parallel. Like each source file has an instance of the rule running, like runs, creates, and then uses that object. In practice, this doesn't hold up extremely well with TypeScript because in vanilla JavaScript, it mostly doesn't matter what other files do. You're just looking at syntax. But in TypeScript and then in plugins that look at like whether the import you're importing exists type stuff, each file actually does rely on other files. So like the architecture is starting to show its age. But yeah, the context, the create, both are create is called once per source file, and context is unique to each source file. Good questions. I like this. This is good stuff. All right, but I wanna test this. So this is where it starts to get, I think, a little more, I don't know, understandable. Or at least like viewable, I think is the word I'm looking for. Comprehensible. So I saw this on the last instance of the stream. There's this big index.test TS file that I'm actually gonna write. I'm gonna do the same fix that I had to do last stream, which is that previously the tests were auto-generated based off looking at your file system. So you could only have one test file named index.test.ts. So instead, I'm going to say if stat sync of test directory is directory. So this is just something I had to do at the last stream, so I could split out my tests into export just namespace dot test. Yes, here we go. All right, auto import, export just namespace. And I think this was imported like import star as export just namespace from // source rules export just namespace. All right. I'm gonna wipe out most of the contents here, and then I'm gonna explain how these rules actually work. All right, unfold all. So let's talk about testing ESLint rules. We have created a rule on the right that is supposed to ban export equals stuff. And in theory, we're later gonna figure out more about the things it's banning. But for now, all it does is whenever it sees an export assignment exporting an ID, so a name of something, it complains, context.report. So in our rule tester, which is this class given to us by ESLint and wrapped by TypeScript ESLint, you call run with the name of the rule in a string. I think that's just like the described name for the tests. The rule itself, export equals rule. Fun fact, that's the same syntax we're banning for now. And then an object that contains at least two things. Invalid and valid. Valid is okay code. So like export const value equals 3. That's okay. Ooh, a thread to check out. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, this is a good thread in the chat. Let me show it on the screen. This is a good one. Write an FAQ. Oh, let me plus one this. People don't understand the difference between these things. Export default class foo versus class foo export equals foo or export class foo. This issue has been open since 2016, and yeah, there does need to be great context here. Thanks Titanium. Yeah, yeah, this really should be docs. If anyone wants to get a good open source contribution in, this would be a good thing to add to their website. I think the website's actually on its own repo now. Yeah, here we go. So yeah, it's a TypeScript only thing. Um, it basically compiles down to module.exports equals rule, which is only really valid in CommonJS for the most part. I don't really want to get too deep into modules because I don't understand it and no one does. But yeah, TypeScript is fun. Um, so valid is an array of things that are allowed by the rule. So like export const value equals 3, export default class hello. These are going to be allowed. And I'll just do another one like imports star as fs from fs just to, I don't know, have some examples of things. And then also I'll just add like const value equals 3 just to, there we go, split across lines just to have like a few good test cases. Yeah. So this rule is, we in TypeScript ES, God, I hate Mac. I hate it. Every Mac I've had has had issues with OBS this last month. All three of them. Why I have had three Macs is a whole other miserable story. Um, oh, hey, Swanzo. Long time to see. Um, I hate Mac. I've been annoyed at Windows, but honestly, people give Apple way too much credit. These giant tech companies like Google and Apple, no giant tech company can be consistently good. It's impossible. Microsoft is not a consistently good dev shop, nor is Google, nor Facebook slash Meta, nor Google Alphabet. They have some great products like TypeScript and Mac hardware, and then they have crap products like half of Office Web and the freaking Mac window manager. Like, ugh, ugh. Also, I've been wanting to use Windows 11, but I don't know, the taskbar, until you can keep things expanded, that's the one silly blocker. But then also Windows, you can't run Unix natively. You have to use WSL, Windows Subsystem Linux, which eats up my RAM on my Surface. It's a whole thing. Yeah. Yeah, and the taskbar in Windows, you can set icons to also, or like the entries to also have text next to them, which like is really useful if you have like four windows in Chrome or VS Code open and like show the title. And then Windows 11, they took it out. They like rewrote the taskbar in modern Win APIs and whatever. Just download more RAM. Yeah, my puny little travel surface is not a dev machine. Anyway, I digress. So for this, yeah, oh yeah, I was gonna say in TypeScript PSN, we generally try not to write rules that just ban syntax. Like this one, I'm just banning syntax because I want to get it tested first, and then I'll add more things. But uh, yeah. Oh yeah, another valid rule or valid piece of code, right, would be like export equals create stuff. Because this isn't an identifier, this is a function call, and we're just banning export assignments that are identifiers. Soon we'll only do for namespaces that are not merged. And merging is a whole other thing we'll get into. But all right, so the first piece of code that we want to be invalid is like export equals stuff, let's call it. And then the message ID, again, we're getting nice TypeScript info that it has to be what we've defined in this object. Use the body, it's line 1. So let me go to cd packages ets lint. You know what? After this test runs, I'll throw up a draft pull request and get it on GitHub and link it so y'all can see the code for yourself because it's getting to be a little bit much. Yarn just export just namespace. Oh, right. I have to do yarn test. There we go. Because Ah, uh, you look at the command being run, which is in dtslint package.json. The test command is actually calling with a config just config. Yeah, so actually, let me just run with npx just with specifically that config on export just namespace. Oh, it actually passed this time. Okay, cool. I don't know what was happening with index. Look at that later. Yay! So just to confirm, if I change the line to like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then rerun, ESLint says, hey, you got it close. Export just namespace invalid, export equals stuff isn't working. You said that there should be a complaint, use the body on line 1, 2, 3, 4, but actually it was on line 1. Yay. So let me check out the TSESLint export just namespace, work in progress, convert export just namespace from TSLint to ESLint. Oops, I forgot to get it all. Git push u origin. All right. Alrighty. So let me just go ahead and plop this in the chat so y'all can see what I'm doing on your own. And I'm also going to post it to Twitter. Draft PR in progress. Post it to Twitter. Windows will become Linux with Windows as a subsystem eventually. I mean, honestly, architecturally, that's not a bad idea. Like, I don't know, why not? Just keep replacing parts of Windows with the Linux equivalents, and yeah, it's funny. People poop on Chromium because everyone is becoming Chromium. Edge is Chrome now, but no one complains about Linux powering everything. But I think it would be good. Oh hey, Alex Munoz, who also sent a PR last stream. Welcome back. Um, I don't know who Linux is competing with, or if it even makes sense to make a competitor to Linux, but this is not Microsoft fanboyism. If there is a competitor to Linux, that should exist. I don't think it's Windows. The desktop manager for Windows is the best. I have to use Rectangle. By the way, shout out to the Rectangle app. Let me lurking. Thank you for lurking. Let me just look up. Cannot recommend this app for Mac. Rectangleapp.com. I can't recommend it enough. It is 100% required. Rectangle or an equivalent. There used to be another one, Spectacle. Someone told me about a similar thing. Spectacle is like no longer maintained, so Rectangle lets you use Spectacle format by default if you want. Um, yeah, it gives you like, oh, you can see my Slack. Let me quit Slack. Uh, yeah, it like gives you these nice little snaps and like expansions and stuff with keyboard shortcuts, which should be there by default, but isn't. Yeah. Anyway, so back to the things. Um, so what we've done is, in addition to complaining about Mac, which is always a valid topic if you ask me, we've created an ESLint rule called export just namespace, and right now all it does is ban export assignments that are exporting an identifier. But what we should really do is the original logic we're trying to port, which is ban export equals and then a namespace. So the way the original rule worked actually was a little different. It just going through the code here. Okay, so it looked at all the root level source files. Um, sorry, all the root level statements in the source file. So const wat equals context.get source code.ast. So ast and then for const statement of ast dot statements, I think, dot body. There we go. So the AST body is the list of all the root level statements in your app. So I'll show this real quick in the playground. Um, just to recap, um, export function foo or do stuff, and then export const my name equals Josh. In our program, the AST, we have a body that has two statements. both of which are export name declarations. Just to call it something else, I'll change this one to a variable declaration and this one to just a function. Now our body has two statements, a function declaration and a variable declaration. All right. So back in code, oh, hi, I just found the hide shortcut in OBS. That'll be faster now. Back in code, what the original thing did was for each statement, or actually the first thing it did is it found the first const export equals node equals statements dot find is export equals, so ast dot body dot find, and I'll just write it inline for now. Function is export equals. So I did this fancy shorthand and now I actually don't even need it. That was useless information for this rule, but cool stuff, honestly, for how ESLint works. Node, TSES tree, that's the type dot node. And the node is, I'm going to call it export assignment with identifier. Return node.type is ast node types dot export assignment. You can tell it's TypeScript only because it's called TS export assignment, TS for TypeScript. And well, actually, that's all I need to do. In fact, is TS export assignment? No, is export assignment? No, nothing for ESLint utils that does that. So now we know the export, that's a typo. Now we know the export equals node is either an export assignment with identifier or undefined. So if it doesn't exist, then this rule can do nothing. Equals node, return. I'm just going to move this function down. And let me just go ahead and node export equals node. Let me just move this up and rerun tests just to make sure it's doing the same as it was before. By the way, the chat's got a little quiet, so watch doesn't work. Please let me know if this just like doesn't make sense. If you have any questions, if you just lost, I can always go back and review things. Oops, return needs to an object. All right. I messed it up. Now there's a failure. Valid export creates stuff. So this was supposed to be valid export equals create stuff here. But now my rule is complaining. If I should have had no errors, but I had one, instead of exporting a namespace, blah, blah, blah. And that, so I don't know if anyone wants to guess why it is that when I changed from using this fancy schmancy query syntax to using this manual function that checks if something is a TS export assignment, because I forgot to also check that node.expression, oops, dot type is ast node types dot identifier. Forgot to add in that check. So now if we rerun tests, yay, it passes. So we're back. All right. Now let's see what else the original rule did. Oh, the rule also checked, in addition to making sure the expression is identifier, it also checks to make sure that there is name text. Let's look at that. Let's say we have like export equals ASDF. That expression needs to have a name, and that's the name there. I don't know how it is you'd have an identifier without name text. So I don't know that we really need a truthiness check there. I don't know how you could do like export equals. Like that's not valid syntax. Export equals literal, that's not even an identifier. So I don't think we really need to check for name truthiness. But here we have this is just namespace function. Returns true, so returns whether there is a namespace, but there are no functions or classes with the name. All right, so going back to the tree, the actual thing we're trying to flag trying to prevent is someone doing like namespace stuff, which has a function foo that's exported in a declaration file. Then we do export equals stuff, which is the same as just saying export function foo. Like in a TypeScript declaration file, which declares types uh, without the runtime syntax, this the above the comment is the same as below the comment. So there's no need to like create a namespace and export it. You can just export the stuff directly. You know, this actually feels like a rule that we could add to TSESLint, but what else? All right, so back in VS Code, I'm just gonna copy and paste this friend over so I can just look at it. So instead of, just comment this out. Um, Instead of always complaining, now we're going to do if is just namespace, which takes in statements and the export equals name. So instead of statements, it's ASD.body, and then export equals node.expression.name. If it is just namespace, then we report. And uncomment, fix my parentheses. There we go. So here's a cute little trick you can do. When you're converting something from one type to another type, you can ask TypeScript to quick fix infer the type of a function parameter from usage. And sometimes it works, and oh my God, in this one it did work. So here statements is, I didn't even know this was the name of the type, the program statement, which is a block or a break or a class with a name or a continue or and so on. All right. So fun fact about the AST differences, statements.type is what ESG calls it, not statement.name. And instead of ts.syntax kind, it's AST node types dots, whatever. And not all of these are going to be the same. So like module declaration, what even is this called? Is this TS module declaration? Oh, okay. Variable statements, what is this called? I guess variable declaration instead. All right, I'm gonna remove this type assertion because, all right, so let's look at what does a variable declaration actually look like in the tree. So let's look at it. Var let my name equals Josh. This is a variable declaration with an array of declarations. Yeah, fun fact. A lot of people actually don't know this anymore who've started recently, but you can do like ASDF equals 2. You can do multiple declarations in a variable declaration. So each variable declaration contains at least one variable declarator, but in most code bases, we lint against this. We say just use one variable each. And then there's an ID, which is often identifier, and init for initial value or initializer. All right. So in TypeScript, I guess the AST, which is not the same as the ES3 one, called a declaration list. Here we call it declarations. I guess we need, let me remove that assertion. Oops. So, oh boy, what is it? Statement.id. All right, so there's this name matches function that exists. Oh, here we go. Takes in a name node, which is AST node types.node or TSES tree, I think is, yeah, that's the types namespace for it. All right. So for each statements, I'm not even reading the logic now at this point, honestly. I'm just reading like through the code and fixing type errors. Yeah, AST node naming, there's no one standard for it. And fun fact, some of Babel's node names are wrong. We have an issue in the TypeScript ESLint repo. Let me find it for you. Um, uh, what is it called? Like Babel, some properties named. Oh yeah, so a parameter is in a declaration, like function takes string, text colon string, string or text, like the name of the function takes string or text string. Like this is a function declaration and this is a parameter. When you call a function, ASDF, this is the argument. The argument is the thing that you pass in to the call. The function declaration has value or let's say like type parameters declared. So in there's actually an upstream issue in Babel that David Sherritt, an awesome TypeScript developer, opened, where like sometimes Babel just calls it the wrong thing. Uh, and then like yeah, TypeScript calls things like declaration list instead of ES3 calling it declarations plural. And then the ES3 itself doesn't support TypeScript syntax, which is why you have TypeScript ES3, which is what adds TypeScript support to ES3 for ESLint and others. I think that's what Prettier uses also. It's a whole thing. Just gonna link this in the chat for anyone who wants a deep dive into node naming. So like most JavaScript and TypeScript developers don't give a crap about this. Like who cares what the node is called? Like no one actually interacts directly with this day to day for the most part. But it is important because the tooling we're writing is all built on this stuff. Like Prettier, ESLint, TypeScript, all these things are built on ASTs. And if you know ASTs, you get a like a power up. It's a level up as a developer. At the very least, it makes it easier to debug when you have a syntax error. So looking through this code for statement of statements, if it's a module declaration, we say that we found a namespace or equals, a little syntax shortcut. Fun fact, you can do this now in JavaScript. You can say or equals. So whether we found a namespace, I guess, is just the return value of this function. Why is this? Why don't we just return true at this point? If name matches, return true. Why do we have to continue looping? I'm just going to do that. All right. Break. And return false at the end. All right. So, oh yeah, Striker, you folks. Yeah, of course. That's another great project. If you want to plug it, by the way, feel free to post a link. Uh, Striker is this awesome. I'll give a brief spiel because I have the audio. Striker is a really cool called mutation testing framework. Striker will modify your source code in a bunch of different ways, like removing an if statement there or changing a string to be empty. And then for each of those changes, reruns your tests to validate the tests to make sure that if your source code is blatantly wrong, at least one test will fail. They're called mutations, all these changes. So Stryker is the name of the X-Men villain who tried to kill all the mutants. That was cute. Anyway, so name matches is a. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Name matches is this function that like takes in a node and checks whether it's the same name as the export equals name, which we previously found to be the name like where is it? Export equals stuff. It's like the name stuff. So we're checking whether we found something. We're checking whether we found, I guess, a module declaration by that name. Oh, this is, I see why, because we can actually return false. That's why any statement or any namespace is true. So if we find a module declaration, which by the way, here module declaration means namespace. Yeah, I know. One of the problems with my current apartment is that we don't have like a doorbell. It just doesn't work, so we have my phone number instead. It's really annoying. But I'm sitting next to the window and no one has knocked as they're supposed to. So anyway, yeah. So if we find a TS module declaration, which I'm just I'm going to show back in the AST Explorer, or sorry, in our AST Playground, namespace lat. Um, this is called a TS module declaration, and this is an annoying piece of history. TypeScript originally called it module, and then ES modules started being called modules. So they're like, crap, we can't call them the same name. So then they renamed it to namespace, which is actually a better name for it. It was like internal modules versus external modules was the nomenclature. But internally, all the code relied on it being called the module declaration. So that's why TS module declaration is actually namespace. You think these code things would be logical, but no, there's always human history and architectural shifts, and some dev decided to call it this thing 12 years ago, and now all the tooling has to match that. Yeah, TypeScript loves its backwards compatibility, so no chance of them removing any keywords, unfortunately. And these are actually, I don't know. I think if they were to remove a keyword, I actually think they could do it. Just remove the module keyword, just call it namespace, write an autofixer. And yeah, TypeScript calls fixed size arrays. I love New York City so much. Closing my window. There's there's literally a cop outside my window shouting at a giant truck not to double park. And yeah, doubles and pardon me, tuples are what TypeScript calls fixed size arrays, and records is another TypeScript thing. Anyway, um, going back to the code, New York, New York. Um, Whenever we find a namespace, so we've found the namespace, uh, maybe. If the name is the same as what we're looking for, then yes, we found it. But actually, what I'm confused with is um, we already know there's an export equals node. So why do we need to check whether there was a namespace exported? Uh, oh, great. Can't wait to live in Philly, which is also loud. That's great. Um, no worries. Good. Like, I don't understand, like, to do, if we remove this, if we just assume any namespace is true, like, why do we need it? I don't know. I'm just copying and getting the old code to work, but whatever. So anyway, in this name matches function, we're no longer using the TypeScript node, we're using TSES tree, and you can check whether the name node dot type equals AST node types dot identifier, and whether the what is it, the name node dot name is the same as the name. So slightly different property names, but it's the same logic. All right. So now we're checking. So we're checking, is there a variable? So a case like this, I'll write it out in code. Um, like there's a const my name equals function, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. And then namespace my name with stuff in it, doesn't really matter. And then, oh, right, can't comment inside comments, it's not Swift. And then you do equal equals my name. So this actually should be allowed by the rule. The namespace is merging in types with the const my name, which means all the things you declare in my name, the namespace, also work for the variable my name. So that's the thing. That's just like how types work in declaration files. Um, and like a lot of older JavaScript libraries set up their declarations to work like this. So yeah, it's just something we have to support. Oh yeah, TechSquid, I also live to the L. I'm by the DeKalb stop. Coffee later? Um, so if any of the statements in the statement, so in the variable declaration, if some of them have the same name, so it's d.id rather than name, um, then okay, we return false. It's not just a namespace. So returning false here indicates, yes, we did have a case like this. This is okay. You don't have to complain. If we find a function declaration, a class declaration, a TS type alias, and a TS, oh, look at that, got the names right. Then let's just remove this type assertion. If the name matches with, what is it, statement.id, oh, it's the same in all of them. Just alphabetize those. So if we see a class or function, so let me just, man, these comments are hard to auto format. If we see like class my name, then namespace my name, then that should be allowed because that's another merging. That's just like a thing namespaces are able to do. So if the name matches, then we return false. All right, and then at the very end of this function, we return any namespace. So what this function is doing, just to recap, is it's returning whether we think that um, the namespace exists and is not merged with any function classes, etc., with the same name. And you know what, I'm actually going to switch this at returns whether there is a namespace, but there are no function classes, etc., with the same name. All right. So now if we run our tests, it should still work. I don't think I did much. Oh, I have to return empty object array at the end. All right, so this invalid one actually should be valid now because stuff exists. Or sorry, stuff is not merged. So this is a valid thing. But an invalid thing, by the way, let me know if it's just my concept of valid and invalid is just not making sense. Like, so if we have class stuff and then export equals stuff and a namespace stuff, this should log a complaint on line 3, 1, 2, 4. They're one based for some reason. This should log a complaint because we have namespace and class that get merged together. Oh, should have had one error, but had 0. Oh, I was really hoping I wouldn't have to debug. I still haven't set up the debugger for this project. um, hmm, interesting. Let me just make sure that if I always context our report, it does actually have the complaints. Yeah, it does create errors. Should have had no errors, but had one. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and comment out all the valid ones. So it's just running the one test. So this way I can start console log debugging. So what should I log? Let's see, console checking name matches. Debug config should be pushed again. Honestly, that should be like a rule. Like you have it contributing to MD, you have like a lock file or something set up, unless you have like a real good technical reason not to, and you have debug configs checked in. Like, so name node. Let's what is the parameter called? Export equals name. All right. Versus, and I'll also put logs in for all these statements. So like, oops, I don't know how that got imported. Found a statement dot type. Pick some quotes. Any namespace is now. So like I'm just putting in console logs through all the uh, whatever places here. And actually the one that I care about is a class. So class declaration, looking at class. Actually, I guess I'll already log there. So inside the if statement, I'll say return false. All right. Wait a second. I think I messed up my understanding of the logic here. This should be valid. Oh my God, this stuff should be valid, this code, because it's merged. Merged is what you're allowed to do. Oh boy. So, dang it. I knew I was missing something here. Okay. Um, if you just have namespace stuff, and then export goes, then that should be not allowed. See, I can tell I've lost my way because I'm getting confused by all this. Oh God, all my console logs are here now. Count them out, run again. Look at that. Expected value to be 4 instead 3. Error line should be 4, but it's actually 3. Amazing. So the rule works. Yay! Woo! And this is good because I want to leave in 10 minutes. So just a heads up to everyone, I'm going to be leaving in 10 minutes. So shout out any names of channels who you think I should raid. Someone who's active on Twitch, maybe Jutan. If you're streaming after this, maybe we should just raid you. Let me know. I'm going to push what I have up. Work in progress. Yay! So the PR, which I will again post in the chat, is updated. Boop. And I'll take this moment to throw out to the chat one last time. Hey, if you have any questions or comments, things you want to talk about, let me know. I'm happy to chat. TypeScript, Philly, whatever. Thank you. I appreciate it. I will need all the good luck and cheer uh, that I could get. Ron Buckton, an esteemed member of the TypeScript team who has had to suffer through reviewing some of my larger pull requests. Welcome to the stream. I am moving to Philly. I'm sorry the stream is ending in a few minutes. But yeah, I didn't realize there's so many people in Philly out there. Wait, are you Philly? Can I actually give you a cake in person this time? I just assumed you were Seattle. Whoa! Amazing. We should do things. We should make a TypeScript meetup. I just recovered from COVID earlier this month, so I have no fear in the world anymore. Uh, TypeScript Philly represent. Uh, cool. So yeah, oh my God, please do. I'm sorry for not calling this out. See, people like Tech Squid TV actually know what to do on Twitch. I'm just kind of here with code. You can tell I don't know what I'm doing. It's all right. I don't mind being the imposter. Please do. Everyone, share your Twitters, your Twitches. I would love to see all your contact information and share it in the chat. This is good stuff. Just to show the screen. Yeah, I want a Philly community. Um, just showing off what I did so far, just to recap the stream. Little interlude. So yeah, everyone post your stuff. There is an old rule called export just namespace rule, which says that if you have an export, like what used to be called module, now called namespace for historical things, export equals stuff. If you just have this and namespace stuff has some contents, this doesn't. This is a waste of time. Just do export function, like they're equivalent, and this is less code. So there's a lint rule. Uh, in Oh yeah, I have no doubt all of you people are fantastic Twitch streamers, etc. It's me who I am still learning and have no idea. Uh, so the lint rule exists in DefinitelyTyped-Tools, which is the tooling for Definitely Typed, the giant repository in GitHub of all the type definitions. Fun fact, if you go to akm.ms/types, there's this nice type search thing which tells you for different packages whether it comes with its own types or, like, say, Lodash, you have to install at type slash and then the name. And those at type slash packages are created by the Definitely Type repo. So DT-Tools or DTS-Lint has this export just namespace rule, which is written in TS-Lint, an old deprecated linter. We deprecated that crap in 2019, and people still use it because its software is hard to change. So I'm rewriting that rule in ESLint, which is the current standard. Who knows how many years any particular thing will last? ESLint has a little bit of metadata, such as the description and this use the body message. ESLint rules store their logic in this create function, which takes in a context, which is all the APIs ESLint wants to give you, like the file name and file contents. It can return an object with queries, but I think this rule ended up not actually using that, so you can ignore that. What we do is we find the first node in the body that's an export equals. So when I say the first node in the body, I mean all these nodes are either commented out or in this big body array. So here's a TS export assignment with an expression that's an identifier. Going back, so we find the first is export equals, which honestly I should call is export equals with identifier because that's actually what it does. Fine. With identifier, I'm reviewing my own code. If we don't find one, then we don't care. This rule can ignore things. But then we check, is that identifier the only thing exported by that name? Or that's inaccurate. Is the identifier merged with anything? So like if we find say a variable that has the same name, then the namespace actually makes sense. There's a good reason to use it, maybe. Or if there's like a class or a function or something like that. So with that logic set, we were then able to write tests, which I'll have to expand. Only one failing case is not enough. There's a lot of logic. But we see that if you just write namespace stuff and then export equal, then that should give you a complaint on line 3. 1, 2, 3. But all these other things are valid, like if your namespace merges with a class, if you don't have a namespace, if we don't even know what the export equals. Is the well in reaction to, that makes sense to do this because, or I guess it makes sense to do this because, yeah, I personally don't really use namespaces ever. Good reason. The only good reason I personally have seen for using namespaces that is mainstream, like isn't some random esoteric edge case, is in type definitions for modules that don't adhere to standard modern JavaScript module practice. And yeah, static fields can do that as well. Like some people do this, they'll like do namespace utilities and like, let's call it like text utilities. They'll do like trim text string and then like returns text.trim, whatever function. I don't know, like trim and bank. I don't know, just to give an example of a utility that you couldn't just use text.trim for. You could, I would personally recommend instead of doing this, just export it. Like, but then sometimes you might want an object, so like you could do like export const text utilities equals. But like, yeah, there's no, there's very few cases where this is preferable in most design. And like classes also have things that you can do like class text utilities. So like static trim and bang, like this is allowed too. But yeah, I would plus one what Zwanzor Nico.js is saying in the chat. Namespace declaration merging isn't needed anymore with static field and other modern changes. Like namespaces are kind of a thing of the past for the most part. React does use the namespace interestingly, and honestly, given the size and scope of React, it might even be like a good use of a namespace. I'll switch over to TypeScript Playground. By the way, if you haven't seen this playground, highly recommend. It's awesome. It like even auto imports types for you. So like if you have code that says import star as React from React. So like now you can do React dot say create context. But also like you could have just made a React module that has like export function create context. Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to get too deep into the pros and cons of namespaces because there is some functionality to them, but for the most part, I don't recommend them. Anyway, let's find someone to raid. Why is my quick actions isn't here? Watch the recursion. Oh wait, no, you can't see my OBS, can you? I'm gonna show you. I love showing people the things that go on behind the scenes. Can you see my OBS? You can't. You can't see it at all. Isn't that wonderful? Maybe. Can I show you this? There we go. All right. So I don't know why these don't say that there it is. So no one has posted any chats, so I'm just going to go with whoever has the least streams. ljtech.ca. Cool. So I'm going to raid them soon. But before I do, I want to thank you all very much for watching my stream. I'm aware that I'm a new streamer-ish, and I appreciate people like Titanium who, in addition to gifting a bajillion sub whatevers, I don't actually know what that does, is giving me advice. So let me know if you have any feedback or advice on this stuff. You can find me on Twitter and GitHub, Joshua K. Goldberg. I do open source full time, but it's not yet paying the bills, so I do consulting on the side. But I'd love to spend more time doing open source. Please sponsor me. Am I sponsored? Oh no, that's not what I wanted. Get sponsors. So if you want to sponsor me, I'd really appreciate it. Subs give me money? Oh my God, please sub. Cool, thank you. Nice to meet you all who I've not met before, and yeah, let's all chat in Philly. Um, and then you can also buy my book, learningtypescript.com. Yay! So let's go raid ljtech.ca, starting in 10. Whoop. All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for subscribing, Zonsor.